Hey everybody, we've got another tier list today back by popular demand. I know that the previous commander tier lists for each faction were quite popular. People seem to enjoy those, and I've gotten requests to do ones for ships and squads. I'm sure I'll do them for some other upgrades as well. But I wanted to start with the squads. This is just what I was feeling today. We've got another back-to-back video day. Like I said, this Q4 of 2022, I've got more time, so I'll try to be putting out more content. We're going to do Rebel Squads today. I'm going to start with the generics here, and then we'll look at the aces. I'm going to spend more time on the aces because there are more of them, and I think they're a bit more interesting. But I want to go over the generics first. So it's all up on the screen here. I'm going to start from the bottom here. Actually, you know what? Let's start from the top. We'll change it up a little bit. So I think the best Rebel generic squad unequivocally is the YT-2400. Now, a lot of my choices in these tier lists, some of them might be kind of hot take-ish. I'd love to generate some discussion with these. There are going to be a lot of you who disagree with how I have these ranked, and I think that's great. My list here is intentionally, a little bit, I don't know, provocational, I guess you could say. I'm trying to get some discussion going. But I think the YT-2400 being at the top is not a hot take at all. I think it is kind of stupid efficient for what it is, and I'll pull up the squads here. The generic YT-2400 is 16 points, speed 4, 6 hull, 4 blue anti-squad, 1 black anti-ship with rogue. It just kind of does everything. It's a decent fighter screen because it's not heavy and it's got 6 hull. It's rogue, which I am very much partial to, but I think is very good, and you don't have to expend resources and command dials to move them around in a lot of cases. 1 black anti-ship, even without bomber, is so consistent. I mean, if you have like the maximum, you can take 8 YT-2400s. If you're rolling 8 black dice against a ship, statistically you're going to hit 6 of those. And that's just so consistent. And then 4 blue anti-squad is great. It's good against scatter aces. It's good against stuff with a lot of hull, particularly if you can get torn far in there for rerolls. Everybody knows the YT-2400 is fantastic, so that's why it's my only thing sitting in S tier. Next, I've got the Ewing at the top of A tier. And within each band here, within each tier, they are pretty much ranked. There's some wiggle room back and forth, so it's not the be-all, end-all, but they're kind of ranked, and so I put Awing at the top of A tier. For what it is, it's your fighter screen, basically. It's your prototypical interceptor. I think it's great. Speed 5 is fantastic. I would expect nothing less for an interceptor. The 3 blue anti-squad is fine, and the 1 black anti-ship is, again, very consistent. Counter 2 is great. 4 hull, they're not going to last a super long time, but if they can get 2, maybe 3 counters off, that's fantastic value for them. And they're 11 points, which is a great price point for your generic interceptor. So I think A-Wings are rock solid. There's a reason that they are so ubiquitous. Next we have the X-Wing, which by itself, I think you could argue is a little bit better than the A-Wing. It's just more powerful. Oops, a little teaser there. Oopsies. The X-Wing, I think, it's more powerful than the A-Wing, obviously. But you're spending 2 points to lose a speed, gain a hull, and gain an anti-squad die. The Escort, in some lists, is very relevant. In other lists, it's not. And in fact, as we'll get to, for one of the aces, or maybe 2 of the aces, it kind of hurts them. The red bomber die is pretty good. That's a 5 in 8 chance of doing something. So overall, they're super, super solid. They're iconic. They've been in the game since the very start. They see a lot of use now, particularly with the new Hera X-Wing. So you have more X-Wing balls, and they've always been big and Biggs balls and stuff. So X-Wing, very solid. We also have the Y-Wing in A tier. I rate this a little bit lower than the other 2, if for nothing else because it's not as good as the Republic Y-Wing, and that makes me sad. But 6 hull for 10 points with a bomber is very good. You can spam the heck out of these things. They take a little while to kill because of that 6 hull. And even though they're heavy, they're still solid. You throw flight controllers on there, 3 blue is okay. Anti-squad, and then the black bomber is great. So overall, Fantastic squad. I just wish that they had blue-black like the Republic ones, because I think that's significantly better. Last in A tier, I have the VCX, which may be a bit controversial for some people. I think, by itself, get it right here, it's not amazing. 15 points for, the Rebel version of the Lambda. You've got the Relay 1, which is less than a Lambda, and you've got Strategic, which is the same, and then you're Heavy. So by itself, not an amazing squad, but with objectives, particularly the farming objectives, being so strong right now, either having VCXs to play your own objective or to mess with your opponents if they bring that kind of thing is very good. On top of that, if you're going to be running like a Ruthless Strategist build, the VCX is great because it's got 8 stinking hull for 15 points. Also, the 3 blue anti-squad, I'm kind of surprised it has that, just because, I mean, that's solid anti-squad. That can be 4 blue with flight controllers, which is pretty significant. And so I don't know why they gave it 3 and gave the land a 2, but whatever. Blue anti-ship, whatever. You're probably not going to be doing a whole lot of ship attacking here, and speed 3 is pretty standard. But overall, very solid. That's why it's at the top of A tier. Top of B tier, we have the greatest travesty in the game, in my opinion. Not really, that's an exaggeration, but I wish the Lancer was better. Top of B, and it's still solid. You're a rogue bomber with grit. Speed 4 with a black anti-ship die is very good. 3 blue anti-squad is fine. The things that let it down are number 1, 4 hull. These things melt really fast. And number 2, 15 points. I would rate the Lancer way higher, at least A tier, if it had 1 more hull or was like 14 points. At 15 for 4 hull, it just is not great. If it had maybe 4 blue anti-squad, maybe there's a conversation there, but there's almost no reason to take Lancers instead of YTs unless you're really trying to skim on points, because the YT is only 1 point more. You get 2 extra hull and an extra anti-squad die, and sure, you lose grit and bomber, but it's still the same black anti-ship, and so you're only missing out on the 25% chance to get the double. And I don't think grit is quite valuable enough to lose 2 hull and an anti-squad die. So while the Lancer is still good and has seen good success, I don't think it's amazing. Same deal with the Skarg. So it's solid. I mean, any bomber with 2 dice, 2 anti-ship dice, is always going to be good at that. It's, with how many ships are running PDICs now, 2 bomber dice is great. It's also got 6 hull and grit, which are nice, but again, it's 16 points and contributes almost nothing in the squad fight, and it's heavy. So if you're going to be thinking about running Skargs, I mean, for 6 less points, you can get almost the same thing out of a Y-Wing. All you're losing is grit and 1 anti-ship die. There are people like Mac who have gotten good use out of Skargs. I think he takes them specifically for the PDIC and evade problem. And that's a case where it does trump the Y-Wing. But, 6 more points than the Y-Wing, I don't know. That's why I rate it lower. Next we have the Z95, which by itself is not good. I would wager to say it's the worst squadron in the game in terms of pure power, nothing else considered. Speed 3 with 3 hull and red dice across the board. Red dice are very, very fickle for a squadron, particularly one without bomber. The Z95, every once in a while you'll get like a 5 damage roll against opposing squads, and it's great, but more often than not you're getting like 1 or no damage, even with Swarm. So it's not good in terms of power. The thing that makes me rate it highly is the fact that it's 7 points. There are a lot of cases where you can just slot one of these in and get that extra squad to bump you to like an even deployment number, like bump you to 8 or bump you to 10. It's also just something you can throw at your opponent to buy yourself some time, maybe get a couple cheeky damage here and there, and not worry about it dying because it's only 7 points. So its cost is what keeps it relevant. I think if it was any more expensive, it would not be good. But at 7, I think it's just fine, middle of B tier. Bottom of B tier, I have something we haven't seen a lot of recently, and that's the YT-1300. It used to be popular in the early days of the game, but people don't run it a ton now. It is speed 2, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute, 7 hull, 3 anti-squad, which is good, 1 blue anti-ship, which is whatever, counter 1, and escort. The thing that makes it good is the 3 blue anti-squad, the 7 hull, the counter 1, and escort for 13 points. It is the same cost as an X-Wing. So, if you are going to slow roll your fleet and you know that you're not going to need the YT to run around a bunch, I would argue that YTs with Jan is and maybe even Biggs, is a better use of points than a bunch of X-Wings instead, because you're just getting more effective hull. 7 hull for 13 points is a great deal. However, this is something that I'm going to bring up when we talk about Bwings, but I'll start the conversation now. A lot of times people will say, well, you know what, Speed 2 is not that big of a problem. And I'm going to preface up front here, this might be one of my hotter takes, so I'd love to get some discussion going on this. But a lot of people will say Speed 2 is not that big of a problem. And for some lists, particularly ones that slow roll or are running fighter coordination teams or all fighters follow me, there are ways to mitigate it. If your fleet's going to be going slowly anyway and you're just using your squads to screen, then that totally makes sense. Speed 2 is not that big of a deal in that case. If you're going to invest the points in fighter coordination or in, what did I say? All fighters follow me. But then you can mitigate that. But the big part where I feel that Speed 2 hurts, and it hurts the YT 1300 less than it hurts the Bwing, is that once you have presumably won the squad war, and you want to start sending your Speed 2 things, which are normally heavy bombers, after your opponent's ships, it's too easy for them to run away. If you have a Speed 2 Bwing and you're going to go try to kill a CR-90 or go try to kill anything that can go Speed 3, they can run away faster than you can get to them. And your bomber, now that you finally won the squad war, is doing almost nothing. Where that doesn't hurt the YT-1300 is that the YT-1300 doesn't really care about chasing around ships and trying to bomb them with 1 blue non-bomber die. It is just a screen. And therefore, I think it works better in that capacity. If you're never going to send it out to go do stuff, then who cares if it's Speed 2? It'll just stay right next to your ships and try to protect you that way. So that's why I think it's better, despite being Speed 2. Moving to C tier, we have the Ewing. The Ewing is just kind of in an unfortunate spot. On paper, it's pretty solid. It's got good, a good chassis generally. Speed 4 is good. 5 hull is pretty good. 4 anti-squad is great. 1 red bomber is fine. Snipe 3 is okay. It's like a nice thing you can kind of have in there in your back pocket. But 15 points, I think, is where it starts to get let down. If they had Snipe 4, kind of like Core and Horn does, then the 15-point price tag makes a lot of sense. But this comes back to you just have better options within the faction for the same or less points. I don't think E-Wings are better than X-Wings, just like in general. They are certainly not better than YT-2400s. So you've got other stuff within the faction that is just better than E-Wings, and therefore I don't think they have as much of a place. They would actually do a bit better in like other armies, like not the Rebels. I think they would do pretty well in the Empire with someone like Sloane. I think they could do pretty well in the Republic. But within the Rebels, there's not enough that makes them great, and there are better options. So I put them at the top of C tier. And then I also put the B-Wing in C tier and for the same discussion with the YT-2400. And this is where the Speed 2 hurts it more, I feel. Now, 5 hull is fine, 3 blue anti-squad is fine, and the blue-black bomber is fantastic. However, 14 points, getting a little expensive there. Would love to see that be 13. But it's the Speed 2 is where it lets it down. Because if you don't have the specific tech to speed it up or like drop them in or something like that, you could find yourself in the modern game of if your opponent has anything that can go Speed 3 and is just going to run with it, your B-Wings can't catch them. So you have to take too much stuff to make them good, and I think if you're going to take all that stuff, why not go with something better? Like, I think the Skarg is better than the B-Wing. I think that X-Wings can do roughly the same thing that B-Wings can do. Obviously less potential damage, but more flexible. And I think that's where the Bwing suffers, is lack of flexibility. In universe, it's supposed to be like this heavy fighter bomber that's good at taking out kind of everything, kind of like a TIE Defender. But it just doesn't have what it needs to do that. If it had 4 blue anti-squad, then there's a conversation. If it was speed 3, then there's a conversation. If it was 13 points and it was on par with an X-Wing, then there's a conversation. But as is, there's not a whole lot of reasons to take B-Wings unless you explicitly want to take B-Wings. And at the bottom, I don't put anything in F. I don't think anything is quite deserving of F. But in D tier, the lonely Hawk 290. It's just an unfortunate victim of the 1.5 changes to Intel. So, you know, it was priced for that. It was built for that. And, yeah, it's just not good. 4 hull is not very good. 2 blue anti-squad and 1 blue anti-ship is bad. Counter 2 is kind of nice, but you're like the A-Wing. The A-Wing is just better at that. And then Intel is not super relevant anymore. They changed the effective Intel now so that it used to make your entire opponent's squad ball heavy. Now it just kind of gives grit. So yeah, the Hawk's not good. It needs a rework because of the Intel rework. So hopefully if they ever give us new Armada stuff or do points rebalances or change any cards, I hope that the Hawk is towards the top of their list. But that wraps up the generics here. We're going to hop into the aces now. And this is where it's going to get a little spicy. So I've got the generics down here, kind of in the order that I had them on the previous one. And you guys will obviously have time to look at this. Pause if you'd like, but it'll be up here the whole time. There's some hot takes on here for sure, and there's some not so hot takes. This time, we're going to start from the bottom. And we're going to talk about Mali. Mali? I don't know how you say it. So, let me pull her up here for everybody. Here she is. Once per activation, while a friendly ship is attacking a ship at distance 1 of you, and you are engaged by 1 or fewer squadrons, the attacker may spend 1 die to change 1 die to a face with a crit. She has Bomber and Grit. She's Speed 3, 6 hull, red-blue anti-squad. Why? And 2 blue Bomber with double brace for, don't miss it, 26 points. That makes her the second most expensive squad in the game, behind only Morna, I believe. I would have to double check, but that's obscene. And there's a reason that she is the only ace I have put in F tier. She's horrible. She's horrible. And there was recently a discussion about this in the Rebel strategy chat on the Discord about how to use her, where you would get use out of her. There is always a better option. I will raise my voice again. There is always a better option for that ace slot than Mali. I don't know. I'm going to call her Mali. There's too many stipulations with the ability. It's once per activation, so no cheeky stuff with double arcs. It is when and your ship is attacking enemy ship at distance 1, so you've got to be close to them. You're engaged by 1 or fewer squadrons, which is not super common unless you're going up against squadless lists. They can spend a die. They don't even just get to do the ability. They have to kill one of their dice like Screed to go to a crit. For 26 points, she's trash. If she was maybe like 22, maybe we have a discussion. And to top it all off, why does she have red-blue anti-squad? That's like the worst. The red dice are the worst against opposing squads. Sure, you can roll hot, but generally blue dice are more consistent. And why only 2 of them? Why is she so bad? I don't really know what they were thinking here. And there's too many stipulations for how expensive she is, for how little she actually contributes herself. So there are probably a couple people out there who have genuinely gotten to use her ability and won games. But I don't think they won the games because of her. I think getting to use her ability and getting her to like actually bomb stuff is just a win harder thing. It's not going to really change the game. There are so many other ways that you can get yourself crits. And so I would never take Mali. You really have to try to make a concerted effort to use her. If we didn't live in a world with a 4 ace cap, maybe she sees more play, but as it is, she's garbage. All right. Moving up to D tier, I'm going to try to move a little faster with these. Dagger Squadron, same problem as the rest of the Bwings. Let me pull it up here. It's just a better Bwing for 1 more point. It gets you Swarm, so that's neat. And it gets a black anti-squad die. It's fine. If you're going to take Bwings, you might as well take Dagger Squadron if you have the extra point for it. There's no reason not to. It just runs into the same problem that the Bwing has. I'm not going to waste time on that. Also in D, we have Kanan. This is very low ranking for a rogue. For those of you who don't know what he does, while attacking a ship, you may spend 1 die with a crit icon. If you do, the defender gains 1 raid token of your choice. He has Assault, Cloak, and Rogue. Double Brace Ace for 19 points, Speed 3, 4 Hull, 2 blue, 1 red anti-squad, 2 blue anti-ship. You know, if he had a scatter, he'd be way better. But double brace with 4 hull, he dies really fast. You can do some cool stuff like putting 2 raid tokens on your opponent in 1 go. Can be kind of neat. It's just the fact that the rebels don't have a great way to actually get any benefit from raid. You're just doing it purely for the raid effect itself, which is not amazing. Versus like if he was in the CIS, Kanan would be utterly broken because of the Freedom Bot. But as it stands, rebels don't really have a great way to use raid. So his ability to just put a bunch of raid on your opponent is not amazing. Cloak is kind of neat, and Rogue is a good keyword, but he just dies too fast for 19 points. So that's why I put him pretty low. If someone starts to get great use out of him, I would love to see it, but there's a reason he's not super widely played right now. Again, just rework the Hawk 290. Bottom of C tier, we got Rogue Squadron. Not going to spend a whole lot of time on Rogue Squadron. It is, for 1 more point, you get Rogue and lose Escort. That's good. That gives Rebels a cheap Rogue option. There are a lot of times where you're going to be 1 or 2 points over on your Rogue ball, and it's like, I'll just sub out a YT for Rogue Squadron. I just personally hate Rogue Squadron because it never rolls well for me. I used to run Rogue Squadron a lot, and I would blank out on my anti-ship dice more than I would actually hit anything, despite the fact that statistics were on my side. So I just have my own personal vendetta against Rogue Squadron, and I don't run it because it has never been kind to me. Green Squadron there's a theme with all of these non-token aces. Green Squadron is also is good. I don't know that it's better than a generic Ewing because you're losing a counter only to gain bomber. Sure. There are times where you'll get to use that, and that'll be nice to get that extra damage. But the black die is already so consistent for 1 damage anyway that I don't know that I would give up a counter. But by itself, it's fine. Next we have Nim. Nim is a fun squadron to use. Where is he? There he is. So his ability, with a blue crit, if the defender is a ship, you may choose and discard 1 of its defense tokens. Also has Bomber and Grit, double brace for 21 points, Speed 3, 6 hull, 2 blue anti-squad, blue black anti-ship. If he had double blue anti-ship, he'd be better. That's simple. That's as simple as it is. He is hurt by the ace limit, just like a lot of the other lower tier aces I'm talking about here. Because when you have, if you're doing like a Biggs ball, you have nowadays Hera, XWing, Biggs, and Jan, and 1 other ace. It's probably not going to be Nim. If you're going for like a heavy bomber thing, you're taking Nim. You're probably going to be lacking in your anti-squad armament. So he just opportunity cost. The ability is incredibly powerful if you can get it off, but in the world of PDICs and evade changes, just not amazing. Wish he was better because he's kind of neat. Next we have Lieutenant Blount. Don't know how that's pronounced. He is the cheapest ace, scatter ace that cheapest overall defense token ace that the rebels have. His ability is, while another friendly squadron with swarm at distance 1 is attacking a squadron, it may reroll 1 die in addition to any dice rerolled with swarm. He also has swarm himself. He's a scatter ace, so brace scatter for 14 points. Very cheap. Speed 3, 3 hull, and the same armaments as a normal Z95. He's okay. The only other swarm squadrons that you're going to be running are Z95s, and en masse, those are just meh. I don't really see them en masse very often. It's normally just 1 or 2 put in there for extra deployment. So he's just okay. Again, ace limit is why you don't see him very often. There are much better things to take if you're running a squad screen, and if you're going to be attacking opposing squads, there are a plethora of options for not that much more than him. But a 14-point scatter ace is always just going to be solid. Next, you have Kian Farlander, the first of our Bwing aces we're looking at today. He has the same problems as other Bwings, but his ability is good enough to elevate him above them. While attacking a ship, if the defending hull zone has no shields, you may reroll any number of dice in your attack pool for 20 points. So, the double black anti-ship with his ability and Bomber Command Center can be absolutely brutal. It is not uncommon to get 3 to 4 damage against an opposing ship with one Kian Farlander activation. However, it's conditional, and so he doesn't always get those rerolls. And he's 20 points, and he's not really like a best in slot if you're going like a heavy bomber who is that slow. As we're going to get to, his counterpart is higher than him. So he suffers from the same Bwing thing of not being able to get to targets super well. You have to have other ways to help him get there. He's kind of expensive, and he's only got the 5 hull with double brace, which means he doesn't last a super long time. So he's fine. He's fine. I don't have much else to say about him. He's fine. Next we have Luke, and people have very different opinions on Luke. His ability is very good. While attacking a ship, treat the defender as having no shields. That's phenomenal. For 20 points, he's kind of expensive, and he's got the rest of the same stuff as X-Wings, except he gets the black anti-ship die. Now that can be great because he's got Bomber, and he's ignoring shields, so it's not uncommon for him to push a hit crit through, which can be kind of game-changing sometimes. The problem is the escort. You can't hide him. You can't protect him with other escorts. Your opponent can just jump on him and kill him early to the point where he may never get to use his ability that you're paying 7 points for. So he struggles purely because of that. I have seen people in homebrew will like get rid of escort and give him adept 1 or adept 2 and he becomes infinitely better. But escort is what hurts him. Whenever I do the Imperial Squadron thing, escort also hurts one of the Vader squads. I'll go over that again then. But escort on your squad that you kind of want to protect really hurts him. So that's why he's in C tier. Getting towards the top of C tier, we have Matton, which he is an interesting squad. At the start of the squadron phase, you may toggle your activation slider to the activated side. If you do, you may place 1 proximity mine at distance 1. So you can do some neat stuff with him. You can activate him with Adar Talon, get him into range, and maybe shoot with him. And then at the start of squad phase, you get him back with Adar Talon, and then drop a mine, which is neat. But he doesn't have Bomber, which his counterpart does, who we'll get to. Double Brace with 6 hull is good, and Rogue is good. He's a solid squad for 22 points. There's really not a whole lot wrong with him. His ability just isn't amazing, and with the ace limit, there are often better squads you can take. So, maybe someone will crack him and make it, really, really good. But as it stands, he's just fine. Top of C tier, we have Han Solo, and Han Solo is hurt mostly by opportunity cost. By himself, he's good. At the start of the ship phase, you may activate as if you were activated by a squadron command. He also has Grit and Rogue. He has great stats across the board. Speed 3, 7 hull is fantastic with double brace, means he doesn't die too quickly. Double blue, double black anti-squad is very, very good. And then blue-black, even without being bomber, is also very solid. That's pretty consistently going to be 1 to 2 damage. So, the opportunity cost comes into, spoiler alert, this guy. Because they both share the Millennium Falcon and Lando is just better in pretty much every way, Han just gets knocked down the tier list. He's also 26 points, which is kind of stupid. He should not be that expensive, particularly when Lando is as cheap as he is. So, if they're going to do a points rebalance and they take Han down to like 24 or 23 points, then I think he absolutely sees a lot more play. If they also somehow put not the Millennium Falcon on both of them and you could take both together, then he'd be played a lot more. The one true place that Han is better than Lando, better in slot for that ace slot and for the Millennium Falcon, in my opinion, is in Sato, because it could be really clutch to move him exactly where you need him to get Sato shots off if you don't have squad commands lined up. You can also do some cheeky stuff where you like triple tap with Han, where you activate him with a ship with 8-hour Talon, bring him back, he goes during the squadron phase, and then he goes at the start of the ship phase, which can be kind of neat, but he's expensive for what you're actually getting. So I think all he needs is a points adjustment, and he'd be way better. Moving into B tier, at the bottom we have Nora. Nora, where are you, honey? There we go. Friendly squadrons with bomber at distance 1 gain the following critical effect. The defending hull zone loses 1 shield. For newer players, this can kind of be difficult to understand. Basically, all this means is that when you have a bomber and it attacks a ship, if it has a crit, it's going to do 1 damage no matter what, but it additionally takes away 1 shield from the defending hull zone. So that can be good. She makes all your bombers better. She's also not heavy, which is pretty good. Double brace at 6 hull, like we've established, is good. Bomber with a black die is good as well. 17 points. She's not too expensive. She is all around solid. She is just hurt by the ace limit. I've said that so many times, and that's just an unfortunate fact of life here. She is hurt by the ace limit because there are other things a lot of times that you want to take instead of her. But if you can fit her in with a bunch of bombers, she's very solid. Right above her is 10 Num. This is Kian Farlander's counterpart in a Bwing, and I think he's better. While attacking a squadron, you may spend 1 blue die with a crit icon. If you do, each other enemy squadron at distance 1 of the defender suffers 1 damage. He's 1 point cheaper than Kian Farlander. He has blue-black instead of black-black anti-ship, but with bomber, it's going to be 2 to 3 damage most times anyway. Kian just has a slightly higher ceiling. And then his squadron armament and his ability is what makes him better. 2 blue and a black, he has a better chance than someone like Nim of actually getting his blue crit effect off, and it can be pretty devastating. You shoot something, and if you get the blue crit and your opponent doesn't have a way to deal with it, particularly like if you're doing it against a generic, then you can just kind of maul or mythal everyone around them, or like Anakin Splash. But you can do it against a bunch of squads. So if your opponent has like a Sloane with a bunch of TIE fighters around you, you can do like a total of 7 or 8 damage in one go. Particularly with AR Town, he can kind of just delete things. So he's good. Because he is more tailored to fighting squads, he doesn't suffer quite as much from the speed 2 can't get to ships problem that other B-Wings do. But it's still not ideal. You have to have a plan on how you're going to use him because he's so slow. Above him, I have Dash. I love Dash, but I also understand his flaws. His ability is great. While attacking, you may reroll 1 die for each enemy squadron or enemy ship at distance 1. He also has Bomber, which is great, and Rogue. Speed 4, 6 hull. He has great anti-squad and good anti-ship. He should almost always be rolling at least 1 damage against ships, and against generic squads, particularly 3 hull squads, he should almost always kill them in 1 shot, which is very good. He's very consistent, which I appreciate in a game that feels really bad when your dice poop out on you. So I really like his ability. The problem is that he is double brace with 6 hull for 24 points, so he often becomes a priority target for your opponent and tends to die early in a lot of games if you mess up just a little bit or your opponent jumps on him too fast. Yeah, he doesn't have a whole lot of way to keep himself alive, and you oftentimes are not running escorts when you're running like a rogue ball, so he tends to die. And that stinks for your 24-point ace, but I've gotten fantastic use out of him, as have other people, and I think he's good, which is why he's solidly middle of B tier. Core and Horn, I think, is just a little bit better. He is Bomber Rogue with Snipe 4. This is what I wish all E-Wings had. Double brace at 5 hull for 22 points, so he's 2 points less than Dash, and he gets a comparable 4 blue anti-squad and the 1 bomber red anti-ship. Corrin is another one who has lost my respect after he has consistently rolled like garbage with his red bomber die for me in games, because I ran a lot of Core and Horn earlier this year, and I was just consistently disappointed with his output. I think I prefer Dash for what I'm doing, but I think overall, assuming the law of averages, Core and Horn is just a bit better because he's cheaper, and the Snipe 4 can be a big deal. So I think he's good. He definitely competes for an ace slot, particularly in a rogue ball. At the top of B, we have Hera, and you'll notice Hera X-Wing is not in this list. Whoever made this, I think it was made before she came out. I would put her in definitely solidly in A tier, but for the Hera we do have in the Ghost, she is actually the most expensive squad in the game. I'd totally forgotten about her when I was making that comment about Mally. She is the most expensive at 28. At the start of the squadron phase, choose up to 2 friendly squadrons at 1 to 2. They gain rogue until the end of the round. That is a massive ability. I cannot say enough how big that can be. You can take other very good squads, aces or otherwise, and give them rogue. And she gives your rogue ball so much flexibility. I love her for that. She's got 8 hull as well, so she's tanky. The single brace hurts, but I mean, she has to have. If she had double brace, she'd probably be too good, even at 28 points. Her anti-squad armament is fantastic, 2 blue, 2 black, and her anti-ship, 1 blue, 1 black, should consistently give you 1 to 2 damage, which is great. 28 points, she's very pricey, so you need to make sure she stays alive for a good amount of the game. If you lose her too early, that's really, really bad, because you've spent the equivalent of a flotilla and a half on one squad that is now dead. So, and she dies kind of fast with single brace. But for what she does, her ability is just so stinking strong, and she has a good chassis. So, Hera is great. That's why she's at the top of B. Bottom of A, we have Wedge. Let me get him pulled up here. He's at the bottom. Wedge has a cool ability. While attacking an activated squadron, you may add 2 blue dice to your attack pool. In combination with someone who is higher on this list, in Dutch, he is downright oppressive because you can be rolling 6 or 7 blues, depending if you have flight controllers or not, against an activated squad. That can just totally wreck someone's day. 19 points. He's also cheaper than Luke, which is why I think he's a bit better. He still suffers from the same problem that Luke does of being a priority target who cannot hide because he has escort. But he also benefits from Hera and Big's ball stuff. So he tends to be a staple of Big's balls. I think Dutch is a bit better, but he's still very solid. And the black anti-ship with bomber is also very good. Speaking of, right above him, I have Biggs. Now, I think Biggs used to be better before the ace limit, and he has I think he's still very good. He's just kind of fallen out of vogue. But with Hera now, with Hera's X-Wing, I think he should see a bit more play because that ball is just so good. His ability, before a friendly squadron with escort at distance 1 suffers damage during an attack, you may reduce the total damage by 1. If you do choose a friendly squadron with escort at distance 1, they suffer 1 damage. He loses the black anti-ship, which stinks, but that's okay. He's still bomber and escort, double brace 19 points again, 1 point cheaper than Luke. He's better. That ability is great. It lets you spread out incoming damage. If you do that with a bunch of X-Wings, or with Jan and a bunch of X-Wings, which we'll get to in a second here, or the YT-1300s, in addition to something like Gallant Haven, your opponent can really, really struggle to put meaningful damage on your squads, and will have trouble taking individual squads out because Biggs is just shunting it around. So I think he's great. He enables a lot of stuff. He's very annoying to play against, and he's very flexible. So I like him a lot. That is why he is an A tier. Right above him, I keep mentioning her, we have Jan. Jan by herself is not all that great. 4 hull with double brace, same problem that Kanan runs into. However, she has a great ability of, while a friendly squadron at 1 to 2 is defending, it can spend your defense tokens. That's fantastic because you can hide her in an escort ball, and your generic X-Wings or your generic YTs, or even your other squads, if they've already used their defense tokens, can just use her braces for, quote unquote, for free. That's great. There's a reason she's so ubiquitous in Biggs balls, because she just enables you to take even less damage by giving your generics braces. So she's very annoying to play against. It kind of stinks that the ace cap hurts her a little bit, not directly because she's still worth putting in your squad of 4, but she can't take as many supporting pieces like other aces she would want to take with her. You're kind of locked in for most Biggs balls, particularly now with Hera, of doing Biggs, Jan, Hera, and then one more who is probably going to be Dutch or maybe Tennum or something. So that hurts her a little bit, but she's still great. Getting towards the top of A tier, we have Gold Squadron. What is that doing up here? How is that defense tokenless ace all the way up here? Well, it's because it's stupid efficient. For 12 points, you get you lose heavy, which is neat, and you get 2 anti-ship dice. with Bomber. Gold Squadron is uber consistent. It is so efficient. It should be in almost every squad ball that's taking bombers, in my opinion, just because it does everything you want it to do. It's 1 point or 2 points more than the generic Y-wing. It's absolutely worth the 2 points. I almost always try to find room for gold if I am not running like a pure rogue ball or something. And even with Hera, like you run it with Hera and Ghost, this is a great thing to give rogue to if you're going up against squadless. Top of A tier we have Dutch. Now I've mentioned him already, but he has a fantastic ability. I believe I've passed him. There he is. When a squadron you attack suffers at least 1 damage, you may toggle its activation slider to the activated side. If it has already activated, deal 1 additional damage instead. That's so strong to be able to turn off opposing squads in conjunction with Wedge. That just enables Wedge's ability on whatever you want. So as long as you can deal damage, which against anything with braces or generics is going to be pretty easy, you can turn him off for the turn, which is really, really big. He's also 16 points. He's very cheap. With double brace, with 6 hull, Dutch is fantastic. There's a reason he's at the top of A tier. I think, again, ace limit. He's almost always going to take one of your spots, which is a shame because other squads, there's a lot of good aces in this faction. But he's almost always worth that ace slot. He just does a lot. He's kind of got like the Hondo effect, but he's much cheaper than Hondo, and it's just better, I think, Dutch's version of it. So, huge fan of Dutch. There's a reason that I've got him at the top of A. Now we get to S tier, and here is probably another discussion area. I rate the Awing Aces. I'm going to do them both at the same time. I rate them very, very highly. Probably higher than a lot of other people, but I'll try to justify that here. So let me get them both pulled up. So we've got Shara and Tycho. I don't rate one higher than the other. I think they're equally good. They do very different things though. They're both scatter aces with 4 hull. Shara is 1 point cheaper. They have the same stat line across the top. Shara's ability is brutal. While performing a counterattack, each crit adds 1 damage to the damage pool, and she's got counter 3. If you've got like Tor and Far or something, and you have TIE fighters or TIE interceptors or vultures attacking you, you should be deleting 1 per attack. Counter 3 with crits counting. You should almost always be getting 3 damage with a reroll. Tycho, on the other hand, his ability, he only has counter 2, but his ability is you are not prevented from moving or attacking ships while you are engaged. That is also so good. It's impossible to pin him down. He can be in a fight and you get him down to 1 hull and he's like, you know what? I'm out of here. Or it's like, I'm going to go tie down this ball over here. Oh, you moved your bombers into range of my ships? Never mind, I'm going to go tie down that squad ball over there. For stuff like, with Sato, he is a must-take with Sato because he can never be locked down, so you can always put him where you need to get Sato's ability off. He's just phenomenal. He's 1 point cheaper than Shara. Both of them are very competitively priced. The reason that I rate them both so highly, number 1, I think they fit into almost any squad ball. If you are not running a Biggs Hera squad ball, then I think Shara Tycho are very hard to not take for your ace slots. Even in rogue balls, I take 1 or both of them because they give you a great screen that you can use that is very annoying for your opponent to deal with. Number 2, they make up one of the 2 best light squad balls in the game, in my opinion. If you're going to run minimal points, so 33 points, and you're just going to run Shara Tycho, that's a deployment. That is something to run objectives like infested fields, and that is, with the exception of Sienna Valen in the Empire, the best 2-squad combo in the game, in my opinion. You are almost always going to really annoy your opponent, maybe even make your points back, and they're one of the few tandems that can get their points back pretty consistently. They're speed 5, so you can get them anywhere. They're just so good, and I have played a ton of them, which is probably why I am rating them a bit higher than other people may. But I think they're so phenomenal. So if anyone out there, particularly newer players, just need a very small squad screen for their Rebel fleet, just take Shara Tycho. You don't really have to think too hard about it. They're just so good at what they do. But the best squadron in the Rebellion and arguably the best squadron in the game right now. He's got a little competition, but it's pretty much the best squad in the game. It's Lando and the Millennium Falcon. Let me read you the utter BS that this ability is. While attacking, you may discard a defense token to set one die to any face. This die cannot be modified again. Additionally, while defending, you may spend one of your defense tokens to force the attacker to reroll one or more of dice of your choice. He's got Grit and he's got Rogue. He has a great, stat line across the top. Speed 3 is fine. 7 Hull with double brace is great. That anti-squad armament of a red, 2 blue, and a black is also great. And the red-blue, very importantly, red-blue against ships, even without bomber, is very good. It is only very good because of his ability. At 23 points, he is very, very cheap for what he does. Now, I want to go, because there's some misconceptions about what his ability does, particularly around people who have not played against him or with him, like newer players. So when it says that die cannot be modified again, whatever he sets, you can still modify the other dice in his attack pool. But that die, normally the red die set to a double, whether he's attacking ships or squads, but particularly against ships, it cannot be evaded. It cannot be rerolled by PDICs or targeting scramblers. It cannot be scattered, which is the big one. It just stays there. You have to deal with the red double. You can't do anything about it. So, what makes him truly broken, in my opinion, is if you don't have a squad screen, or if your squad screen dies and you have a flotilla that's in range of Lando, if Lando has both of his braces, he will guarantee kill it in 2 turns. If with Adar Talon, he could kill it in 1 turn, because all he's going to do is roll his pool against your flotilla, regardless of what it is. He will discard a brace to set the red to a double, deal your shield damage and 1 to the hull, and then on the next time he goes, he's going to set it to a double again, discarding his second brace. You cannot modify that red die again, as 2 more damage to your hull, and your flotilla is dead. And Lando has just single-handedly wiped out an activation, and presumably like 20 to 30 points. He's also great against scatter aces. If you go up against a scatter ace who has 1 hull left, it does not matter what your attack pool is. You just set the red to a double and say you're dead. Something that people don't often think about, you cannot set his dice to accuracies, because accuracies, technically when you spend them, you're modifying the die. So you can't set his dice to accuracies, but you can set them to anything else. So it's almost always you're going to set the red to a double. I guess there are niche situations where you already have a double and you set something else. Something to think about too is, let's say you're a scatter ace and Lando rolls his dice against you and everything's showing hits. If he sets the red to a double, you can't scatter that double, but you can scatter everything else. So just something to think about. But yeah, no, he's stupid. And his defensive ability, which a lot of people forget about, it's like, let's say you have a squad that rolls up and rolls 5 damage against him, and he can say, okay, reroll all of it. And a lot of times that'll go down to 2, and he wins. Or I frequently use it where, let's say a ship with blue flak hits him, and he doesn't really have anything else coming in that round. I'll just have you reroll that die instead of taking the 1, which can often be pretty big. On top of that, one niche interaction is with asteroid tactics. He can get his braces back when he lands on asteroids, so that's fun too. There's just so much about him that's broken. I put him in every single rogue ball I ever make. There's, in my opinion, no reason to take Han Solo unless you're going to specifically run for Sato, where you really, really, really like Han Solo and you need Lando officers somewhere else. But he's pretty much a must-take in almost every heavy squad ball, in my opinion, with the exception of like a Biggs ball. But that is going to wrap it up for today. Here's one last look at the tier list here. Like I said, there's some hot takes in here. There's some things people are going to disagree with. Please sound off in the comments. Let me know where you would rank things, or if you've had success with some of the stuff that I've put low here. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you guys later. Have a good one.